If you're in higher education right now, or even just, reading the news, you have felt the speed of this change.
It's been incredibly fast.
We're talking, of course, about AI, specifically large language models and how they just crash landed right in the middle of the academic world.
And, every big technological leap, the printing press, the calculator, it always brought these same fears.
Always. The death of learning, the end of critical thought. But AI, because it can produce such sophisticated, original-sounding work almost instantly, it just feels qualitatively different, doesn't it?
It really does. And that's the central question we need to get into for you today. Is AI a fundamental, maybe even an existential threat to higher education as an institution?
That is the big question.
That's the tension we're unpacking in this deep dive. And to do it, we're using a really fascinating source, a detailed transcript of a formal debate from late 2025.
And a formal debate is perfect for this.
It's gold, really, because it neatly organizes everything into a clear pro position, that AI is a threat, and a con position, that AI is actually a necessary catalyst.
It forces you to look at both sides impartially.
Exactly. It helps us avoid just, having an emotional reaction to the technology.
So our mission today is to synthesize those arguments and figure out, is AI threatening the institution itself, or is it just threatening the outdated models of teaching that universities have been clinging to?
For decades, some cases.
Right. So we're going to structure this whole deep dive around the three main pillars of that debate: integrity, the value of the degree, and the economics of it all.
Let's jump straight into that first one, because it's the one that has faculty and administrators scrambling right now.
I think we have to start there. The integrity crisis.
Yeah.
It's so tangible, and the fears feel very valid. I mean, can we really trust a diploma if students can just use AI to bypass all the hard work?
And the pro-advocates in the debate, they jumped on this first. And their evidence is, well, it's pretty staggering.
It is.
Their whole argument is that AI enables cheating at a scale we've just never been able to detect. Not reliably, anyway. They cited studies showing that 89% of students
89%?
have admitted to using ChatGPT for their coursework in some capacity. That's a near universal adoption rate.
So this isn't a niche problem, it's systemic.
Exactly. And the institutions are feeling it. The data from companies like Turnitin showed a massive 32 to 46% jump in suspected academic dishonesty cases.
Wow. Right when LLMs became widely available.
The system was just immediately overwhelmed, and the consequence, as the pro side puts it, is devastatingly simple. If you can't tell the difference between human thought and machine-generated text,
Then the classic term paper, the take-home essay.
they all become unreliable. The whole system of assessment breaks down, and that compromises the credential itself. Why would an employer trust it?
And that's where the panic really sets in, right? The fear that we've just turned higher education into this incredibly expensive diploma mill. But is that fear justified, or is it an overreaction?
Well, the con side argues it's a huge overreaction, and one that's rooted in, frankly, institutional laziness.
Okay, that's a strong claim.
It is. They don't deny the integrity crisis, but they reframe it. They say it's not a technology problem, it's a failure of assessment design. AI isn't a threat to education's core mission.
It's a catalyst.
It's a catalyst forcing a necessary evolution. Their point is that any system that was still focused on just grading basic information recall, that system was already flawed.
So the threat isn't the tool, it's the institution's failure to change the test.
Precisely.
Yeah.
They use this really powerful analogy with the calculator.
Right.
When it arrived, math education didn't die. It just shifted its focus. We started testing rote multiplication and started testing complex problem solving.
You test the thinking, not just the arithmetic.
Exactly. And AI does the same thing. It forces education up what educators call Bloom's taxonomy.
Yes, Bloom's taxonomy. So for anyone who hasn't been in an education class recently, think of it like a pyramid of thinking skills.
Right.
The bottom is just remembering and understanding, which AI is great at. But as you move up, you get to analysis, evaluation, and creation. That's the human part.
That's where the con side says we have to live now. If a student is just using AI to write an essay, they're operating at that low comprehension level. The challenge now is to design tests that force them to evaluate the AI's answer, or create something new from it.
That sounds great in theory, but what does that actually look like in practice? You can't just stop assigning essays overnight. What were the solutions they proposed?
Well, the debate transcript got into several key pivots. Things like oral examinations or vivas, where a student has to defend their work face-to-face.
Okay, that makes sense. Hard to use AI for that.
Right. Or in-class analytical writing where there are no outside tools, and a big push toward really specialized project-based learning.
But wait, let me push back on that a little. A Viva, an oral exam that's incredibly resource intensive. How does a big public university with, say, 500 students in a class switch to oral exams?
That is the crucial counterpoint the pro side raised. They said these solutions are expensive and they really only work for smaller, elite institutions.
It sounds like it.
But the con response was compelling. They said, look, if the goal is to certify genuine intellectual mastery, then the cost is justified. And universities either have to find those efficiencies somewhere else,
Which we'll get to later.
or they have to admit their old models were just unsustainable anyway. The AI is just accelerating a reckoning that was already coming.
Okay, so the integrity crisis forces a long overdue conversation about what we're actually testing. That makes sense. But let's move to that second pillar, the value of the degree itself. If the machine can do all the routine cognitive tasks, synthesize research, write basic code, what are students paying $40,000, $50,000 a year for?
This is where it gets really interesting. This is the skill displacement argument from the pro side.
Right.
They argue that the value of college has always been about developing critical thinking through struggle, that intellectual boot camp. If AI just gives you a plausible answer instantly, you skip the workout. You never build a mental muscle.
And there's actual data suggesting the market is already questioning this value even before AI really took hold.
Oh, absolutely. The pro side presented some sobering data on what they call credential devaluation. The labor market premium for a bachelor's degree compared to just a high school diploma has dropped.
How much?
It was 84% back in 1980. By 2023, it was down to 56%.
Wow.
So the core threat is that employers might just start valuing demonstrated skill certifications, micro-credentials, over a traditional expensive degree that may not represent what it used to.
So I have to challenge this. The con side used that calculator analogy before, but a calculator can't write a whole essay for you? AI can do the bulk of the cognitive labor? Isn't that a false equivalency?
That's a fair challenge.
Yeah.
And the con side addresses it directly. They argue AI doesn't diminish the human role, it clarifies it.
It clarifies it.
If the machine is handling the mechanical assembly of facts, then the human has to handle the strategy, the ethics, the judgment. The professor's role has to shift from the sage on the stage.
A person just transmitting facts.
Right, to the guide on the side who is actually mentoring human development.
So the degree doesn't become obsolete. It just has to certify a different, higher level set of skills. What are those skills that AI can't replicate?
The con side really boiled it down to the uniquely human stuff. Ethical judgment, emotional intelligence, and true cross-disciplinary synthesis. Drawing on wildly different fields to create something new.
Okay, so an AI can synthesize law and history, but only a person can judge if the result is actually ethical or politically viable for a community.
That's the idea. And this fundamentally changes what a university sells. You're not selling information anymore. You're selling mentorship and the certification of human judgment.
Which leads us directly to the third pillar of this debate, the money, the financial pressure on the universities themselves.
And this is maybe the most urgent threat, especially for smaller schools. The pro side painted a pretty dire picture. You've got these skyrocketing costs, over $40,000 a year at many private universities.
And at the same time, you have these free or very cheap AI-enabled alternatives popping up. AI tutors, world-class lectures on platforms like MIT OpenCourseWare.
Exactly. And that creates this fundamental economic contradiction that becomes a huge enrollment threat.
But the pro side also raised an equity concern here, right?
A big one, the digital divide. They argued that AI might actually widen the gap between the haves and have-nots. Only the wealthy institutions can afford the best AI tools and the faculty training to use them responsibly.
Leaving poorer schools even further behind. That's a powerful point. So how does the con side counter this argument that AI alternatives are just better and cheaper?
Well, they completely flip the script. They present AI as an equity equalizer and as a solution to the economic problem, not the cause of it.
How so?
They argue that AI can help solve the massive administrative inefficiency in higher ed, what economists call the cost disease.
The cost disease. We hear that a lot with healthcare, too. What does it mean for a university?
Essentially, it's the soaring cost of services, like education, where it's hard to get productivity gains. So tuition just keeps outpacing inflation. And a huge driver of that is the bloat in non-teaching administrative staff.
Okay, so how does AI fix that? Where do the savings come from?
By automating all those routine bureaucratic tasks, enrollment processing, financial aid queries, scheduling, even basic grading for multiple choice tests. One research firm, Holland IQ, estimated that AI could help universities recapture billions in these kinds of efficiency savings.
So the argument is that AI cuts the administrative overhead that makes tuition so expensive in the first place.
Right. And that allows institutions to refocus their resources back on that core mission of human-centered mentorship.
It's a really complex trade-off. It's raising the intellectual bar, which costs more in teaching, but it's also cutting the bureaucratic costs.
It is. And on the access front, the con side argued that AI helps fulfill the democratic promise of higher education. They cited research from places like Stanford,
Okay.
showing that AI-powered adaptive learning platforms can provide personalized help and identify knowledge gaps in real time. It basically functions as a 24/7 tutor.
A resource that historically was only available to the absolute elite who could afford private one-on-one instruction.
Precisely. So AI takes this high-quality tutoring model, the personal guide, and scales it to everyone. It strengthens the institution's ability to serve a diverse population. It doesn't threaten it.
The con-side's ultimate conclusion, then, is that AI makes the university more accessible, more efficient, and more capable of doing its real job.
Exactly. The old model of mass lectures and standardized essays was already failing a lot of students.
Yeah.
AI just forces the change to a better, more personalized system.
So after all of that, what does this all mean for you, the learner, right now? We've gone through the integrity panic, the crisis over the degree's value, and the surprising potential for economic efficiency.
I think the central conflict, when you synthesize the whole debate, is this. AI is absolutely a threat, but it's a threat to institutional inertia. It's a threat to outdated, lazy assessment methods.
But it's an opportunity for the core human mission.
An unparalleled opportunity for that messy, complex work of mentorship, creativity, and ethical reasoning.
If we had to distill this whole deep dive into, say, 3 key takeaways for you, what would they be?
Okay, first, the focus of your education has to shift immediately from just acquiring information, which AI can do perfectly, to synthesizing and ethically verifying that information. You have to learn how to audit the AI's output.
Not just accept it.
Never just accept it. Second, successful institutions, and therefore successful graduates, have to pivot hard toward critical thinking, creativity, and AI literacy. You need to know how to direct the tool and how to challenge it.
And the final takeaway really gets at the survival of the university itself.
Yes, the university's ultimate survival depends on those irreplaceable human functions. Credential signaling that means something to an employer, real research supervision, and most importantly, that high-touch human mentorship that turns a student into a thinker.
If a university can't offer those 3 things,
The pro side would argue it's already obsolete.
the source material suggested that the real question isn't whether AI threatens higher education, but whether higher education will threaten itself through inaction. And that raises a fascinating final thought for you to mull over. If learning to use and audit AI is now a core competency for any degree, how quickly must the entire credentialing system change to keep pace? And what specific human skill that AI cannot touch will be the most valuable measure of a degree 5 years from now?